Mehera, since you stole my heart and fled across the sea, each thought of you is like a dart of blissful agony. You are more beautiful, Mehera, than any I've set eyes on. When will I see you coming back across the blue horizon? Without you, desolate am I, and yet my bitter grief is redolent with your memory that brings my heart relief. You are more beautiful, Mehera, than any I've set eyes on. When will I see you coming back across the blue horizon? Oh, Mehera, longing is my joy, and ruin is my pleasure. For in that house that you destroy is found love's perfect treasure. You are more beautiful, Mehera, than any I've set eyes on. When will I see you coming back across the blue horizon? You are more beautiful, Mehera, than any I've set eyes on. When will I see you coming back across the blue horizon? You said the love that I have may be only a spark, so I must protect it, be close to my heart. You said that love never dies, and when I call out your name, the spark inside my heart starts to glow, burst into flame. You said my nights would be lonely, there'd be days without end. I'll try to remember you with every letter I send, but then I get so distracted, so I call out your name. The spark inside my heart starts to glow, burst into flame. Calling your name is all I have left, but still I don't despair. I look for your smile, there's love in your eyes, I see it everywhere. You said the pain in my life and the tears that I cry and the longing to see you keeps that spark alive. With my back to the wall, I call out your name. The spark inside my heart starts to glow, burst into flame. Calling your name is all I have left, but still I don't despair. I look for your smile, there's love in your eyes, I see it everywhere. You said the love that I have may be only a spark, so I must protect it, close to my heart. He said that love never dies, and I call out your name. The spark inside my heart starts to glow, burst into flame. The spark inside my heart starts to glow, burst into flame. The spark inside my heart starts to glow, burst into flame. When my works have come to dust and wings of quest are broken, will I see you in my heart with arms of love unfurled? Mehera, you are more beautiful than praise's tongue has spoken. Your fragrance captivates the heart and spreads throughout the world. And it's for you, my love, that the banyan trees are sighing, hoping your gentle grace will shower in the night. And it's for you, my love, that my loneliness is crying to leave your wandering, and in my soul a light. And when the aching of my heart inflames beyond endurance, will you bestow compassion's kiss to soothe away my care? I see the promise in your eye, the infinite assurance that one morning I will wake and see you everywhere. And it's for you, my love, that the banyan trees are sighing, hoping your gentle grace will shower in the night. And it's for you, my love, that my loneliness is crying to leave you wandering, and in my soul a light.
I don't know how old I was. I was less than 5 because we moved when we were 5 to Glen Innes. And somehow I'd been told about Jesus. And I remember going to my mother and saying, when I grow up, I'm going to go and live with him. Mm-hmm. And she said, but darling, you can't. I said, why not? Mm-hmm. She said, because he's dead. Mm-hmm. And I was totally and utterly devastated. I was very small. And I remember thinking, well, if he's dead, what's my life? And I ran out into a paddock and sat under a tree and sobbed. And I had an experience then where he told me that either, I can't remember whether it's, I will be with you this time or you will be with me. And he kept that promise.
Wow, yeah, it's beautiful.
As I grew up, I forgot that. I forgot all about it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I got caught up in life. I got caught up in all those things. But life never made sense to me. It was, I mean, the life that I grew up into seemed to be non-purposive. I couldn't understand why you suffered. Why anyone would continue living if you suffered without making any sense. And I left Australia when I was 24 for 6 months, and I basically stayed abroad from then on. I lived in lots of different places. I travelled around. I was kind of a gypsy for a long time. And then in '69 I was living in Italy. And I thought I was going to live in Italy for the rest of my life. I had a job, I had friends, I had a flat, I was living in Milan. And one day this feeling came in me, this voice inside said, leave. And I thought, leave? What's this nonsense? How, leave? Where am I going to leave to? Leave. And I'd spent a very lonely, cold, horrible winter in London when I first arrived in Europe. Hated London. But I didn't know where else to go. And this voice was so strong, I literally booked a seat on the next plane. And it was a charter flight going from Milan to London. I called up some friends and said, who I was supposed to be having dinner with the next night. I said, I'm sorry, I won't be here. And I landed in London not knowing where to go or who to see. I knew a few people there, so I went and stayed with some. And after a few months when I'd been there, I thought maybe Craig and Georgina are still here. They were close friends of mine when I was at university, at Sydney University. So I phoned them up and they said, well, we've just come back from India. This was '69, and we have a Meher Baba meeting tonight. And I said, well, who or what is Meher Baba? And they said, we'll tell you when we see you. So come over tomorrow. So I went over, I walked in and I saw that poster, The Ancient One. And I remembered that childhood experience. It's my Baba story, really. Craig and Georgina were part of this group that Don Stevens had. And when I met them, he was about to start an introductory group. So I went to that, and I went to sleep. I had it lasted for about 8 weeks, and I fell asleep in every meeting, and I didn't know I was asleep. And it did start off, and I was very tired at the time. Life was very trying and stressful. I had these wonderful, refreshing sleeps, but believing I was still awake, and at the end I'd wake up and find I'd been asleep the whole time. This was the entire introductory course, and at the end of it, Don invited me to join his God Speaks class.
Because you were so diligent.
I didn't know what he was talking about, so I didn't start attending that, but I started going to his discourses, and then he asked me again to join his God Speaks class, which I did, and Delia was coming. Delia came a lot in those days to the meetings, so I got to know Delia quite well, and I was part of Don's group, but I was also very friendly with Delia, with an older Baba lover, another Baba lover called Hilda Halpin, with Tom and Dorothy Hopkins. And, I knew all of those people quite well, and I'd go and see Delia. She would be absolutely Delia. I remember walking once, she took me for a walk in Kew Gardens. She lived right next door to Kew Gardens, and she looked like this very proper English woman. She was actually Panamanian, her grey hair, and she used to wear little suede shoes with punched shoes with little high heels and a fur coat. We were walking around Kew Gardens, and she said, and Baba had a meeting of the hierarchy here. And it was this woman talking about the spiritual hierarchy meeting in Kew Gardens, and it was with Baba. Don's group, it was very helpful for me because it gave me a very, very thorough grounding in discourses and God Speaks and all of those things, which I probably wouldn't have had otherwise. And he was very helpful. I always found Delia very loving. She was she'd get very nervous at times. That's how the women mandali remember her, that she'd always get excited. But there were a whole lot of things happening in England at that time. There was Pete Townsend and Delia, and when the first Baba meeting I went to, it was full of these unbelievably beautiful women. There was Karen Townsend and there was Barbara Amos. These were all people who were models or rock stars' wives, or the most beautiful group of women I'd ever seen in my life. And they were all young and glorious, and there were lots of artists and musicians, and Craig Sanroque, and there were a lot of old Baba lovers. I mean, my age now, but they seemed old when I was in my 20s, who'd spent who'd met Baba. He'd been part of the early English Baba group. Kim, for example, of Kimco, the one that Kimco was named after. I used to sometimes give her a lift here and there. And she used to give Georgina singing lessons. Oh, she was glorious. She was tall and blonde and statuesque and totally beautiful, and married to some very handsome man, many years younger than her. And yes, no, she was lovely. And she would say, people said that I left Baba, but I never left him. Never. I came to India first in '73. I didn't. When I heard about Baba in London, he was so much with me, I couldn't see the point in going anywhere else. I mean, I didn't have to go somewhere to find him because he was with me, so I didn't think to come to India. But in '73, everyone was saying, no, you should go to India, so I did. And that's when I met the mandali and was astounded by them, because they seemed to me to be the most complete people I'd ever met. I mean, still do. Yeah. But Baba was very much with me in London.
Yeah.
London was my honeymoon with Baba. Came to India again. I went and lived in America for a little while in '74, '75. But I was feeling this great restlessness inside me, and I felt there was some big change about to happen, but I didn't know what it was. But I knew that there was some major upheaval about to happen in my life, and I was looking forward to it, actually. I was wondering what it was, but didn't know. And at the beginning of '76, I came here. And that's when I first met him. But when I left India that time, I felt from Baba very strongly, go back to England, make as much money as you can, as fast as you can, settle everything in England, come back here as soon as you can, and learn to type, which was a very odd instruction. So I did all of those things, and I came back, and I didn't know whether I was coming for. The only thing I left in London was I had an unfurnished flat, which was in central London, which was almost impossible to get, and I kept that. And I didn't know whether I was coming for 3 weeks, 3 months. I didn't dream I was coming for the rest of my life. But Don Stevens had said to me, and I'd forgotten about it, but he'd said to me, I guess a year or so before that, he said, I really believe that people are born where they can best work out their sanskaras, that Baba has them born, that you're born in the place where you're best able to do that. So he said, so I don't really think it's a good idea for people to live in India. He said, but I think you should.
Wow.
And I heard it and I thought, but anyway, I came to India and I came back, and so I made as much money as I could, and then I did all the things except get rid of this flat. And when I came back, I really didn't know how long I was staying. And Mani looked at me and she said, are you staying for the summer? And at that point, even then, Meherabad and Meherabad were closed in the summer. You couldn't stay in the summer. And I said, I don't know, Mani. I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing. And then, a little time later, Bauji said to me, Lindsay Reiter, who was managing the health centre in Arangan, her father was very ill, and she was going back to see him. She said, while Lindsay's gone, would you like to manage the health centre? And when she comes back, we'll find something else to do, because you're to live here for the rest of your life. So I went through a lot of turmoil and struggle and over various issues, which I won't go into now. And I eventually decided how could I lose this opportunity of a lifetime to stay here? And I said, yes. And then where was I going to stay? And Mani said, well, where are you going to stay? I said, Mani, I don't know. She said, well, you can stay in town at the trust office, or would you like to do that? But I was supposed to be managing this health centre. She said, but you'll have to ask Padri. So I tootled up to Padri. Padri was he was the most intimidating of all the mandali. All the others you would go up to and, they'd hug you and kiss you and stroke you and tell you you're wonderful. This is when you first met them. But Padri never did any of that. You barely dared hug him. He was very aristocratic, and he was very austere, and he was very loving, but he was very much just a lone man. And he'd lived a life, basically without any contact with women. And I was a young single woman, so I went up to him and I said, Padri, could I going to be managing the health centre, could I live here? He kind of looked at me and said, all right, you can stay there, which was on the veranda of the bungalow where pilgrims used to stay near Heather and Eriko's room, or you can stay over there, which was Barbara's interview cabin. Where do you want to stay? I said, wherever you say. He said, you stay in the interview cabin then. Mm-hmm. Head was staying in the Rotary cabin. So I began my life at Meherabad, and I never went back. I was too scared to come back and pack up my things because I didn't know whether the mandali would change their mind and send me away if I wouldn't let me come back, so I just stayed put. I arrived in India, with quite a lot of London polish on me. I'd been at Meherabad a few weeks, and Adi Kairani came out and took one look at me and said, that London polish is wearing off, isn't it? And Meherabad in those years was kind of the Meherabad of Manzali Mim, looking back, because that was the life that Padri lived all his life. That was the beginning of his life with Baba, was the beginning of his life staying with Baba, and that was how he lived at Meherabad, and how he lived at Meherabad was, externally anyway, was how we lived. He had an enormous, we couldn't go to Meherabad without his permission. We couldn't go to Naga without his permission. We couldn't take a bath unless it was under the restrictions that he'd given us. We couldn't, even the amount of water we used when we went to the loo, he had told us what soap we washed our clothes with, and when we went to bed, when we got up, pretty much everything.
What we wore?
What we wore. Oh, if you're a woman, what you wore. I mean, down to here and down to here and up to here, and double layer over your bottom was, and if you wore anything else, change. Well, we got up when he got up, which I think was what, about 5:36?
Yeah, 5:30. 5:45.
And he'd go. We didn't go to bed as early as he did, but if I would wake up in the night and put the light on, if the electricity was working, he would call me in and say, "Why was your light on?" I'd say, "I couldn't sleep, Kaka," and he'd say, "That's because you're not trusting Baba." And he was very loving with us, and but he was very strict with us, which was the same thing in a way, looking back on it. Those Meherabad days were very difficult in some ways, but they were very glorious. One of the things that happened, I was managing this health centre. I didn't know anything about Indian medicine. I'd done a tiny bit of nursing. I didn't speak the language. I didn't know the medicines in India, and there were 2 doctors and a nurse and a lab technician and case paper people and all sorts of people like that who were supposed to be under my direction. And so if I'd asked Padri a question, he would tell me one answer, but I would also have to ask Goher, or she would ask me, and she would tell me something completely different. So I learnt very quickly that you had to try to avoid asking too many mandali what you should do, because you'd get into a terrible fix. Because you couldn't do opposite things at the same time. Mehera was very, very, one of her great loves was gardening. And one of the things she really loved to do was collect seeds from trees and put them in baskets and have them germinate and then find a good home for them. And Heather and Eriko, Ted came first, and then Heather and Eriko came, and then I came and Alan came. And I'd had an example of what happened if Mehera told you to do something and it was against Padri's wishes. Mehera had, Padri was very, very, very nervous about us getting involved with the women mandali, because all the men mandali were very, very apprehensive and about the women mandali, because Baba used them the women mandali to rub and scrub the men mandali. And Mehera had told Heather to plant some bougainvillea at certain places, and Heather did. And Padri told Eriko and Heather to leave the next day. He was very, very upset. And so he really didn't, it wasn't because he didn't want trees and things at Meherabad, but we didn't have the water. We had 2 wells, and only one that was flourishing at all. And if it didn't rain, we didn't have anything. So he didn't want us wasting water on trees. And just before the Pilgrim Centre opened, Mehera came out to Meherabad and was looking around and said, you know, it won't be nice if pilgrims sit on the veranda and can see the men's graves from the Pilgrim Centre. So when it rains, you plant a hedge around here, plant these seeds. So I went and told Padre, and he went ballistic. And he basically gave me all these dreadful messages to give to Mehera, and totally forbade me to do it. I mean, he was really angry with me. I mean, he was really angry. I mean, he was temporarily angry with me. He appeared to be angry with me, let's say that. And I would go and say good morning to him every morning, and for the next week, when I'd go in and say good morning to him, he would shout at me for about 10 minutes, which was a terrifying experience. Any of you who've met Padre would appreciate that.
Yes.
And so I thought, well, maybe Mehera will forget. I mean, what am I going to do? If I don't do it, I've displeased Mehera, which means I've displeased Baba. And if I do it, well, I can't do it. I mean, Padre totally forbidden me to do it. And because he knew that if these things grew, they had to be taken care of forever and ever. And who knows what else might happen out of it. If I got an inch, maybe we'd all take a mile. So I thought maybe Mehera will forget, and it rained, and Mehera said to me, did you plant those seeds? And I said, no, Mehera, I didn't. Why not? I said, I'm sorry, I just didn't do it. Well, I want you to do it now. I thought, what am I going to do? I mean, what can I do? I don't know what to do. So I went up to the Samadhi and I said, look, Baba, this is not fair. I'm the meat in the sandwich between Padre and Mehera, and that's not fair to put me there. You've got to do something. You want Mehera to have this loose hedge. Please do something. And I was totally, utterly petrified, and I went down the hill and I went into Padre's kitchen and I said, Kaka? He said, yes. I said, you know that loose hedge? Oh, that loose hedge. Yes, I'll plant that tomorrow. And the next day he was out there planting it. He got seeds and he got someone with a pick and just scratched her. And it rained and it all came up and I couldn't water it and it died. So the next time it rained, I planted it and it came up again. And then the Pilgrim Centre opened and Padre let me have the water from the sewage. But I couldn't have a pump, and I got this old bicycle pump and this old fellow on a bicycle, and he used to pump it away. And fortunately it didn't kill it, but then I got a few straggly plants here and there. Then we got a huge rain and it all drowned. Anyway, it kept going and going and going, and gradually it started growing a bit. And the day before he died, he went around and collected these seeds and gave them to me, said, that hedge of yours has got holes in it. Sow this, but not too thickly. They were first cousins.
Did they know each other growing up? Do you know?
They must have, because Mehera was in Pune and Padre was in Pune. And Mehera's mother would see her sister from time to time. And I don't think they knew each other very well, but they would have known each other, yes. And but Baba was so strict with Mehera and the men mandali. I've never seen one of the men mandali look at Mehera. Mehera would come to Meherabad and Padre would be walking and his face would be averted. He wouldn't glance in her direction. Same with Erich. When she'd come to watch programs in the hall, Erich would be sitting on the cushion there, looking at Baba's chair, or looking at the program. Mehera would be sitting here. Mehera wouldn't look at Erich. Erich wouldn't look at Mehera. It was ingrained in them not to notice each other. I don't think I ever saw any of them look. Even Muhammad, who didn't have that order from Baba, as far as I know. I mean, he didn't have those sort of orders. Mehera came walking through the hall once and said, Jai Baba Muhammad. And he blushed. He got so shy. He kind of looked down. This is Baba's must. And when she kept walking, he said, there goes Dada's favorite one.
I had a lot of really good chances when I went to architecture school to design and build buildings. That I was very lucky, and had a lot of very satisfying jobs and stuff, and somehow fairly quickly realized that that wasn't going to make it for the rest of my life. I was going to have to do something else, and it was also the time of Alan Watts and Timothy Leary and Baba Ram Dass and the Indian philosophies about this is all illusion, and if you can somehow realize it, you'll become enlightened, and everything will make sense, and your life will suddenly take on a new, the right meaning and so on. So I really started to develop a longing for that to happen. The only way I could, it was impossible for me to mentally make that, be able to do that mentally, but I had a lot of stubbornness that I could fast. I could stop eating. And I read somewhere that if you stopped eating long enough, you could become cleansed, and your mind would suddenly be able to make this leap. So I was determined to do that, and so I went and left my work, left my stuff. I had a dog. I had to find a home for my dog, and I went up to Vermont. My plan was to go to Florida, where it's warm all the time, and there's a lot of natural fresh water, and I could just go and just be there and not eat. And so I went up north and left my dog with a friend and got out on the road. I hitchhiked everywhere then, and I had long hair and a beard. Put my thumb out. This was the first step in the journey, and a Volkswagen car pulled up like this in front of me and stopped, and on the window facing the outside was a big picture of Meherabad. Mm-hmm. And so Meherababa's image just pulled up in front of me about 5 feet away from my face, and there he was. Wow. And the driver was on her way to the society, Meherabad Society in New York City. They had a group that they were Baba lovers, and they were having this big Baba birthday celebration. I figured if I follow these, get a ride to New York, I'll meet people who are going farther, and I'll find an easy way to get to Florida. So I went with them, and I went to their program and was very moved by it, and especially moved by the people there, which were people from all walks of life, and people, very establishment people, and what we used to call straight people, and hippies, and old mm-hmm. people, and young people, and kids, and people who wore ties, and people who wore beads and stuff, and they all seemed very comfortable with each other, and respectful of each other. And that was a big surprise to me. So I was very impressed with Baba, and I did get a ride farther south, and the fellow driving the car, I started asking him about Baba, and he actually wasn't answering my question. He was just saying how fortunate I was to be at this stage and to have suddenly learned about Meherabad, and said go to Myrtle Beach Center. So that was on the way. So I went there, and Jane Haynes took me around, took the tour, the new person tour and everything, went to Baba's house and stuff. And I just remember the biggest thing that happened was she went out on the back porch. If you've ever been to Baba's house, there's a porch in the back of the ping pong table. And she described how Baba played ping pong. And he would, with a little child, he would hit the ball so that it landed right in the middle of the paddle, and the little child was able to hit it back. And a real good player would get a real good game, and a person who really had to win to be happy would just win. And it was that kind of way he played. And I just saw Meher Baba there, kind of in a nothing mystical or anything, but I just realized he was real, and he was Jesus, because when I was real young, I believed Jesus was real, just couldn't see him. And then I realized Baba was real, and you just can't see him. But he's real, and he works with you, and he's your friend. And I felt, see, up to that time, the responsibility was mine of being happy. And you're searching around trying to find ways, the way to be happy. How am I going to be happy? And then I suddenly realized it wasn't my problem. That just try to be be Baba's friend, be with him, and try to be friends with other people, and the problem of being happy is no longer a problem. That was like a big kind of thing that I could drop. And I did go on to fast for nowhere near what I thought it would be, and then but I did do it. And then I went around. It's kind of like, I went back and I saw my parents, who I'd been alienated from, and I shaved my beard and I cut my hair. Went and lived went back. I was living on a commune at the time. Went back to the commune. But I was a Baba lover by then. I didn't believe Meher Baba was God or anything, but he was my companion, kind of. And then people started telling me that I should go to India. And that seemed kind of silly. Why would I go to India? They must have enough work to do without entertaining me over there. And but they said no. Baba told them. Baba wants them to meet people and to tell them about Baba. That's what they want to do. That's what they're doing over there. So you should go while they're still there. And so I was thinking maybe I'd go. And then I got a call from Phyllis Ott, who was Lynn Ott's wife. She's a painter, and Lynn Ott's the painter, the blind painter, who told me about James Cox, who was raising money to build this building in Pilgrim Center in Meherabad, and Lynn was going to paint all these paintings for it, but he was looking for an architect. So then I decided, okay, I'll go with James to India and look at the site and see, just as an architect, I'll check the site out and then I'll go back and design them and send him a roll of drawings. So I came, the minute I got here, that mandali said to me, you're not going anywhere until you've shown us what you're going to do. And also Pendu told me, you're also here to stay. Bauji told me I was here to stay. I said, no way what am I going to do here? They got me a T-square and a table and some pencils, and I started drawing things, and I sat a lot of time with Padre. And I really fell in love with the little building that he built, the little dining hall that he built there.
Yeah.
And the local people. And I realized that I wasn't going to be able to innovate or do anything unusual. It was going to be just what was there, and that was the right way to go. So I stayed just a fairly short time, maybe 3 months, and then realized I'd have to come back and supervise this building, and I came back on the 12th of February, met Janet at the Dooney. I asked James what he had in mind, because really speaking, he was the client. He was the one that was going to pay for it. And he said he liked the cloisters in New York, so that's how those courtyards came in. They're actually the same size. There are arcades around them.
Yeah.
Is how that came about. There's this. It's like a museum, but what they'd done is they'd taken apart some monasteries in Europe and rebuilt them in this in New York City, in a park in New York City. They're really nice.
When I first went to live in India, I was very involved with the work I was doing at Meherabad, and I didn't go to Meherabad very much because I was overwhelmed with all this stuff I was trying to learn so fast. And Mehera told me, sent for me one day and told me that I was to go to Meherabad once a week, minimum. I should go to Meherabad once a week. So that began my relationship with Mehera. Well, actually, it didn't. I had some very what's the word? I'd had some experiences with Mehera. Even I was tremendously shy of her when I first met her. Dreadfully, dreadfully shy with her. And she would be very loving to me. So when I'd go to Mehera, one of the first things she ever said to me, I was a chain smoker in those years. And when I couldn't afford cigarettes, I used to smoke beedies, and I became known as the beedi queen of Ahmednagar. But when I first went there, this was even before I started staying there, Mehera, I would whiz off and have a cigarette. I'd be in Mandali Hall, I'd get up, I'd go out, I'd smoke, I'd be on Mehera's porch, I'd go away, I'd smoke. And one of the very first things Mehera said to me, "Do you like to smoke?" I said, "Yes, Mehera, I love to smoke." She said, "Well, you can smoke with me, I like the smell of smoke."
Wow.
And I didn't know at that time that she had no sense of smell. She was just trying to make me feel comfortable.
Aww.
But
How sweet.
I couldn't smoke. I couldn't smoke in front of her. I just couldn't do it. And so when I started living there, and I would go on different days to Heather, so it would just be Heather and me having lunch, because we were the only girls living at Meherabad then. And Vesta was living in town, but that was about it. And then Vesta left, and it was Heather and me. So we would go on different days, and we'd always have lunch with her. So she encouraged me to have a relationship with her, which was astonishing. And then there came a certain time when my work, what I was doing at Meherabad, decreased. I'd been working at the health centre, and then I helped set up the Pilgrim Centre, and I did various things. And then I just started going to Meherabad, and I didn't do a lot for her. But that's when my heart in my life has been at its happiest. When I was with Mehera, my heart was content. I didn't want to be anywhere else. Didn't want to do anything else. I didn't have to, do things for her. I just wanted to be with her. I just wanted to be near her, to be in her company, to be around her. And I did that for quite some time. I would just go and be with her. I didn't sort of serve teas or do those things because I didn't need to. I didn't feel I wanted. I didn't want to. That was a different kind of. That was a very. Anyway, I didn't do those things. I just was totally happy to be with her. And then Anavaz asked me to work on that book. So I did that. She wouldn't let me tell Mehera.
Why not?
Because she didn't. I don't know why not. She didn't want. I don't know.
You think she was shy?
Anavaz, no, she wasn't shy. But that was probably the most terrifying thing I've ever done, was to do that. And because I couldn't talk to Mehera about it, but she was going to read it, and if she'd been displeased, it would have been totally devastating to me. I mean, it would have, that would have been terrible. But Mehera, in retrospect, because she was so natural when she was with you. I mean, she liked to talk about anything. I mean, you could talk. I mean, she didn't talk about great spiritual things with you. We talked about gardening. We talked about Baba. We talked about her life with Baba. We talked about. I mean, there were things you didn't discuss with Mehera because you knew that wouldn't please Baba. You know, things that people didn't. It was just very natural not to do things that Mehera. You knew Baba wouldn't want Mehera to hear because she'd lived this extremely pure life with Baba. And for someone to have done what she did, which was really to have nothing in her mind except Baba, and yet be so approachable and natural and loving and friendly. I mean, we'd have lunch with her and she would walk around, serve it, you know, would you like this? And she'd get up and give it to us, or, you know, give us food from her plate, and stand there and serve us. I mean, and you'd be sitting there thinking, please, Mehera, sit down, don't. But, you know, that was her pleasure. She loved to do that. And it was just astonishing. But when you think of what she actually did, which was to take that enormous leap from doing what you wanted to do, thinking what you wanted to think, to thinking only of Baba and only to please Baba and what would please him, I mean, now we had a little more experience of what it's like to try to do that. She did it. She would, I mean, that's what she did with her life, that's what she did with her mind. And you've all tried, I'm sure, to focus on Baba and keep fast your mind from all the ways and byways and alleys that it wants to go into. And you know how impossible that is. And she did it. I mean, of course, Baba was there, but and I'm sure it wasn't easy for her. I asked her once about that life that she lived on Meherabad Hill. There's a tank room on the hill, and this was before before the second story was put up, and after the second story was put up. From when Mehera joined Baba, very gradually, he closed the world to her, and when they came to live on Meherabad Hill, really the doors closed on the world to her. She couldn't hear a man's voice, she couldn't hear a man's name spoken, she couldn't read, she couldn't write, she couldn't do anything but Baba's work and think of him. And she had no privacy, she had to have 2 women with her at all times. She walked through a tunnel to go to the kitchen and back. She couldn't go outside without Baba's permission, Baba being with her. And when Baba wasn't there, Mani would follow her around and write down everything she was doing. At 2:15, Mehera stood up. At 2:30, Mehera sat down. At 2:45, Mehera sneezed, and what she had for breakfast, what she had for this, everything that she did was recorded and given to Baba. And there wasn't anything of herself that she hid from him. And to be that soul, can you imagine to be what you must be to be that? To have that capacity, to feel what he was feeling, to only want what he wanted, to only think what he wanted you to think, to go to every degree, to do everything perfectly for him. She'd be tired, she'd be this, she'd be that, under very difficult circumstances. She would never take shortcuts. She died before it was published.
Ah.
But it was that was right somehow.
Uh-huh.
She went to Baba in May '69, and the book came to India in June '69. 89. So it was kind of. I mean, for me, the thing about that book was it was written believing that she was going to read it with her voice in my ear all the time. You know?
How
Could be
strange.
possible, yeah.
So she never knew about the book.
I think she did,
Uh-huh.
because I would go and ask her questions. She'd say, "Why are you asking me that?" And then one day, after it was finished, she said, "I have something very beautiful I want to give you." And she opened this box, and there was an incredibly beautiful locket of Baba in gold. I mean, lots and lots of gold with this on this stone that someone had given her. She said, "I want you to have this." So I did a lot of gardening with her, because she would send me all these trees, and then she would send me notes about what to do with them. The biggest gardening tip of all is to take care of the roots. That was what she told me. If you look after the roots, everything else, if you keep the roots happy, everything else will follow suit. And she really didn't like lots of pruning. And you know, she always gardened with a scarcity of water.
When I finished designing the Pilgrim Center, I presented her with the plans. I showed her the plans. I mean, I gave them to her to look at. Not I would never actually, you know, be with her while she looked at them and all that, but I gave them to her, and she kept them for a while and looked at them. She also came out to Meherabad, and when I showed her where the building was going to go, she said, "That's too close to this tree. You'll damage this tree." So I shifted the building. So I felt that she had chosen the site for the building. When she returned the drawings to me, I just kind of took them, and then she said, "But don't you have a rubber band or something that keep them from unrolling?" And I said, "No, but that's okay. I can make lots of copies, don't worry." And she said, "No." She said, "I have to find you a rubber band." So she went back in the house and spent a long time, finally came back with this rubber band and said, "This isn't your drawing. You can't just replace it like that. These are Baba's things. Take care of them." This is so it's like, you didn't do this. This isn't your project.
I got a little mosquito bite or something on my finger, and she noticed it, and she said, "Oh, we should put something on that." So she took me inside into a little medicine cabinet and got out this bottle of disinfectant and said, "Now, we mustn't waste this." And she put the tiniest, this is Baba's, we mustn't waste this, put the tiniest little dab of antiseptic on it.
The big neem tree as you walk out the door, it's a huge tree now.
And there's another very huge tree, which is a kind of semi-banyan tree. She gave it to me when it was literally no more than this high. There were just two tiny little green things sticking up. And at that time the Pilgrim Center was under construction, and there weren't any fences, it was wide open, there were masons and servants and so forth, and there was no water. And she said, "I know this is a very beautiful tree." And you know, literally it wasn't more than an inch high, it was a tiny little thing. She said, "You're to plant it and nothing is to happen to it." What am I going to do? Where am I going to plant it? So I planted it near a tap. It was the only tap, so it would get at least some water when there were. And now it's much too big for where I planted it. It's going to cover half the Pilgrim Center.
There's a plant, I guess they're in Australia.
It's a cactus.
I think they're also known as a night blooming cereus or something like that. They open up huge, beautiful flowers. They only open up in the middle of the night or when it gets dark, and by the morning they're gone. And they're probably one of the most beautiful flowers in the world and the most beautiful smell. And Mehera gave us a pot. She wanted us to see it open. And but it's a big thing and it's very fragile. And we had to carry it on the bus and keep it from getting damaged and take it to Meherabad. And we I don't know what happened. We put it there and came back, not the next night, but the night after, I think. And it still looked all right. And Craig was there, and I think we stayed up till 1 or 2 in the morning, but singing songs. We had a big girl waiting for it to open, and we missed it. It had happened the previous night.
And Mehera asked me,
And,
Mehera asked me about it. Oh, that was dreadful. I don't know how we missed it.
I don't know how we missed it either.
It went from being this little thing to suddenly blooming and flopping.
Yeah, it wasn't, you know, it had to actually grow, so we didn't know. We probably waited several nights, but we didn't know when. I mean, we couldn't go out there every night and stay up till midnight to see it, so. But we missed it by one night.
But it was horrible.
That was funny.
No, it was
That
awful.
was embarrassing, yeah.
And you know those big psych in the Pilgrim Centre? That
Yeah.
was when we were still getting an ST bus back from Meherabad, arranged by David Fenster. And it was before the Pilgrim Centre opened, and Mehera told me she gave them to me, these 2 huge pots. And she said, now, not to break a single leaf on these psych hats. She said, but I want there to be something in the Pilgrim Centre that was at Meherabad when Baba was here and that he'd seen and admired.
Wow.
So I mean, and the pots were about this high and the things were about this big, and getting them onto the bus and getting them safely back to Meherabad, and then getting holes dug and getting them into the holes without breaking a single leaf was. But now they've got progeny all over Meherabad.
Well, we just recently moved to a new house. We had to leave the house that we were in for most of our time there, which was the Baba's interview cabin. It necessarily had to become an archival building. Couldn't remain a residence. And Heather and Eric now are pretty much gone. Alan's moving. Moment's dead. Sushila's gone. Padri's gone. So Lower Meherabad is not what it was. A lot of people have come to stay outside the Meherabad boundaries, kind of, bringing with them different interests. It's still a wonderful place. It still does everything it always did, really. Meherabad, of course, is not the place it was in terms of meeting the mandali. Life goes on, and it's still I think it's still just as pilgrimage is still as I mean, there's old people who remember the old days and think it's, it's not like it was and stuff, which is true, but I think I just think it's going to actually get better and better, frankly. Bigger and bigger and better and better. It was actually, I mean, the beginning I had a lot to learn, and it was a struggle. This building, first of all, it had 25 years of experience. The staff knew just what they wanted. And the first building was just, no one had a program. I didn't know what, no one had, this is what we want thing on it. I mean, I just did it. But this one, we knew what we wanted. We knew what didn't work. We knew what worked. And we had a contractor who was a genuine Baba lover, which made a big difference. We had some wonderful craftsmen from Rajasthan that came to live and work there. It was actually a very rewarding experience. It was hard work, but it wasn't there weren't any like really unpleasant kind of fights. I mean, there was hard work. Things went wrong and stuff like that, and things. But it never got unpleasant, and it became much more of a group effort, a team effort. I didn't never attach myself to anyone except I might say I kind of was attached to Padri in the beginning, But a lot of people who jobs were to serve a particular mandali, or they were very much attracted to a particular mandali and spent most of their time with them. I had a job to do. More than most of the residents, I had a specific job to do. And it didn't involve direct mandali participation, except Bao. Bao was the visionary and chairman of the trust now, and holder of the purse strings, and the one who decides pretty much what goes on out there. So I have a close working relationship with Baoji.
It had a lot to do with Padre.
In the beginning, very beginning, it was with Padre, because Baoji wasn't there, and he wasn't the chairman, and Padre lived there, and he was the person that I turned to. I mean, is this right? Should I do this? Is this the way it ought to be? And I'll tell you a story. Often, I mean, in the beginning, I was never right with him. I was wrong all the time. And he would say, "What do you think you ought to do here?" And I'd say, "Well, I think it needs this and needs that." He said, "No, that won't work." And he wasn't right all the time. I didn't agree. I felt then, and I still feel, that he wasn't always right. But I was all in his. He kept saying and that I was wrong. I mean, these, I just couldn't come up with the right answer or do the right thing. And I remember one time getting very exasperated and asking him, after being told I was wrong again, "Padre, do you think I'm a fool?" And he goes, "Do you think I'm a fool?" So I was being taught how to have the right approach to things, I think. I mean,
He said to me once, "I have to lop that lofty loony sometimes."
well, they actually remodeled the trust office, so I collected the flagstones from the floor there and put a lot of it in the new Pilgrim Center, because I knew Bob had walked down them, and I know Mani and all the mandali had.
Indirectly, yes, because Mehera had given me a lot of plants, and I've kept them over the years, and they've multiplied, and I had far more than I could take care of, so I donated those to the Pilgrim Center. So things that she'd given me that had multiplied, a lot of them went there.
Well, there's a board of trustees, and as a group, they will manage the trust. And I think it'll be a committee kind of, because there's no replacement for the mandali. Nobody's going to be able to fill their shoes. So it'll be more of a group decisions made by the board of trustees. I think there'll be, because we won't have the mandali talks, but we will have. I mean, Janet has done a lot of work on, and of course you all have, about the filming and the taping and the photographing of everyone. So there'll be a lot of that can be accessed. In fact, that's what we're hoping. The original Pilgrim Center will become a place for that to happen. We'll make the record of, a multimedia place where people can easily see films and listen to tapes and see the facsimiles of documents and have of the record of Baba's life and work in the mandali.
You know, the question of the changes that have happened. I mean, the biggest change at Meherabad was Padri's death to me, because when he went, that whole phase of that kind of life, in a way, gradually went also. And I used to go and complain to Erich bitterly, oh, everything's changing, everything's this, oh, it's all this, it's all that. And he'd get very upset, he'd get very stern with me and say, if you want to live that life, you live it inside now. Baba said, this would happen with Meherabad, and it's happening, and nothing will stop it, and, you know, get over this, you have to accept these changes. And if you want that life, you live it inside, which is true. It's always available there, if you choose to live it. That's what Padri did. He chose to live that life at Meherabad, and because of his choice, we were also able to live it. And we know what it, I mean, you know, if we want to live it inside it, we've had that experience of what it tastes like. But, you know, Baba does know what he's doing. I mean, you have to accept that. And we may grumble, oh, we don't like this, or we don't think it should be like that, or so forth and so on. We don't know anything. We don't know what his work is. You know, our job is to try to please him, but we really don't know those things. I've had to come to that conclusion. There have been so many changes at Meherabad. And someone will come there for the first time, and it is as glorious for them as it was for us when we came, in completely different circumstances. And those changes will continue. He had a lot to do with Muhammad. Yeah. Especially, I didn't have so much to do with him in the later years, but in the early years, because other people would come, and certain ones, I mean, Gabe, for example, Gabe Mednick, he was amazing. He really, the latter years were the Gabe Mednick years with Muhammad. He was totally devoted to taking care of him. And Muhammad became more withdrawn then. He was quite withdrawn when we first came to, withdrawn is the wrong word, he was very Jalali when we first came to live at Meherabad. Jalali means
Fiery.
Fiery, yes, very fiery. He threw me off the veranda once.
Really?
I was very, I mean, I had just come to live at Meherabad, and Padri had taken Muhammad's hand one day, and he said to me, see this hand? I was looking at Muhammad's hand, it was about here. So Padri was holding on to me, see this hand? He said, it's like a hand, doesn't it? He said, but it's not, it's a tiger's paw. And he said, remember this. He said, God will forgive you if you displease him, but he will never forgive you if you insult his must.
Wow.
And that was kind of my first introduction, one of my early introductions to Muhammad. And then Padri told me, he had a very hard bed in those days, and he was doing a lot of fasting and not moving around very much. It was when he was living in Mandali Hall. And he got really bad bed sores. Not really bad ones, but he got bed sores, and Padri told me you had to dress them every day. And so I'd go up onto the veranda, he'd be sitting in his chair on the veranda, and I'd try to pull his kaftani up and dress his bed sores, and he would shout at me and tell me go away, and say I don't know what he was saying, but I mean I can imagine, because I know a little bit about what he said now, but so I wasn't doing it as often as I should have been, and Padri noticed these sores weren't getting better, so he told me, you dress these sores, just speak sweetly to him. I couldn't speak sweetly to him because I didn't know a word of Marathi, so I went up there and I pulled up his kaftani, and this frail old man who was sitting in his chair, he bent over, he picked me up, and he threw me off the veranda, and I landed in the dust.
Oh.
And for once, Padri was sitting at the stairs at the other end of the veranda. He never sat there. He kind of looked up and he said, what happened to you? He was very laconic. He said, well, he just threw me off the veranda. And he went up and he gave Muhammad a big scolding, and Muhammad, Mapi Janabai, Mapi Janabai.
I just remember him as just someone who made you feel really good, to just see him. And I mean, I would greet him, and I once in a while would bathe him and clean him and stuff. Was rarely able to go to Nagar. I had to ride a bicycle and all that sort of stuff, and I thought this time I'll buy a lot of soap so I don't have to go in every day or go in every other day and get a bars of soap for him, because you kind of had to give him a bar of soap. There was a period where he expected you to bring him things, and he must, I don't know how many bars of soap. You used to give him tons of soap, right?
Yes, he used to. He'd go through his red soap period and his green soap period and his white soap period.
So I had gotten several, 2-3 dozen bars of soap, and I was going to save them so I could just give them to him one at a time. And he called me over while I was carrying them, and I'm kind of hiding them. And he knew I had them, and he just said, "Show." And I pull one out and say like that, and then maybe two, and I said, "Come on, give me the whole thing." So that was it. And he knew exactly. It was, I guess, one of the times I realized he saw more than normal people see.
He was like a fire at Meherabad. He was like this glowing fire at Lower Meherabad. Even if you didn't see him, it was somewhere you could go, and that's what it felt like.
Yeah. He would turn on this tap and stare at it for hours.
Gosh.
In the drought. Now for the must pottery, that was fine. Huge respect for a moment. He kind of knew what his status was. I mean, for us, we don't know. I learned some stuff about you.
You did?
Yeah.
In the sorrow I wandered, my spirit oppressed, but now I am happy, securely I rest. From morning till evening, glad carols I sing, and this is the reason I walk with the King. Everybody sing. I walk with the King, Meherabad. I walk with the King, praise his name. No longer I roam, my soul faces home. I walk and I talk with the King. Oh, 4 years in the fetters of sin I was bound. The world could not help me, no comfort I found. But now, like the birds and the sunbeams of spring, I'm free and rejoicing. I walk with the King. I walk with the King, Meherabad. I walk with the King, praise his name. No longer I roam, my soul faces home. I walk and I talk with the King. Oh, so near despair, in the lowlands of strife, look up and let Baba come into your life. The joy of his love to you he would bring. Come into the sunlight and walk with the King. talk with the king. Okay, we go empty. Empty. Ready? Empty. I was just an empty shell till I met you. Hungry, hungry, just another hungry heart till I found you. Loving, loving, loving was a feeling I never knew. Dying, dying, I was dying for the lifeline you threw. Your love is my breath of life. Your love blows me away. I wasn't born yesterday, but I just started living today. Empty, empty, I was just an empty shell till I met you. Hungry, hungry, just another hungry heart till I found you. Loving, loving, loving was a feeling I never knew. Dying, dying, I was dying for the lifeline you threw. Your love is my breath of life. Your love blows me away. I wasn't born yesterday, but I just started living today. I remember distinctly the beginning of this love, about which it was easy to make vows so hard to prove. A new moon hung on a blossom-laden apple bough, and eternity hung in the silence of that now. Presently the stars came out and got caught in your hair, and dawn escaped from your eyes and spread everywhere. Night followed night of dreaming, loving, till the months half closed, when the moon came up and stood on the hill like a yellow rose. You stole from my side sometime during that full moon night, when I woke, my body was shrouded in white. Gradually the moon waned to a chink in a curtained window, then died. dark took over to forever continue. I left my house and orchard and came down to the seashore, where my grief can be heard by none above the surf's roar. I remember distinctly the beginning of this love, about which it was easy to make vows so hard to prove. I remember distinctly the beginning of this love,